beginning, I suppose, really. I mean, as far as I remember, I had started playing guitar. I was playing for maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 months, something like that. And I was really into my dad's music initially and whatever I was hearing on the radio around that time because I was 12. Prior to that, I really only heard what my dad was listening to or working on at home. We didn't listen to the radio. I wasn't around people that were playing, let's call it popular music. It was just whatever was on at home. So I, at 12 years old, I started to hear other music other than my dad's music. I always liked my dad's guitar playing. I liked watching him play guitar. I liked the look of the instruments. And in particular, I loved the SG when my dad was playing the SG because it reminded me of Batman. It has those horns, you know. And so I started playing guitar and I was hearing music for the first time that was not my dad's music because I started to have friends that were listening to music and they were listening to the radio. And what was popular on the radio at the time was Ozzy Osbourne, who had Randy Rhoads playing with him at that time, and Van Halen and The Who and AC/DC, and I started hearing the Beatles and all these other things. But prior to that, I really only heard what my dad was working on at home or what he might have been listening to from his record collection. And that was pretty varied. I mean, it was a lot of classical musicians or folk music. Sometimes there were rock records in there. I remember hearing Black Sabbath and Jimi Hendrix and Queen from my dad's record collection. So I was starting to hear things that were interesting to me, but I really didn't know that much about music. I just liked that it seemed like something really creative and fun and interesting, and it was cool to watch and listen to. So when I started to really get into playing guitar, uh, I needed a little bit of a push to figure out how to do what I wanted to do. And my dad set up a few lessons for me with his guitar player at the time, who was Steve Vai. And Steve was about, I think, 20 years old at that time, maybe 21. And he sat down and he had this notebook that he made where he wrote down some exercises. And if you don't play guitar, there's ways that you can learn to play guitar without reading music. You can sort of look at neck diagrams and you can count where the frets are and go, oh, okay, put a dot here and a dot here and dot here. And visually you can see where you can put your fingers. So I never learned to read music. I still can't. I can read it just barely, but it's so much faster for me to just listen to something and learn it by ear. So back in the day, this notebook was the thing that showed me how to navigate the neck and figure out some stuff. But as Steve likes to say, when I first took my first lesson, he was really petrified to go back and talk to my dad because he thought, oh, there's no way this kid's going to be able to play. He can't even make the connection from his right hand to his left hand, and stuff is just not working out all that well. But then a week later, there was drastic improvement, and a week after that, even more. So it was the kind of thing where I put in a lot of time. I got really excited about it, and I would start playing initially several hours a day, and then it became 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day because I was just obsessed with trying to learn stuff. And at that point, I really got focused on the music of Van Halen because there was something about the guitar sound and what he was playing. It was so focused on the guitar, but it was also, in a way, it reminded me of my dad's music, not because it sounded similar, but because it had this innovation to it. There was something about it, an energy, a sound that was unique that really stood out. And it made me really want to learn what was going on with that. So I did my best to just kind of sit there and pick out little bits and pieces. But having only played for 6 or 7 or 8 months, I wasn't learning a lot of stuff all that easily because at that time, there was no visual reference. Now you can go on YouTube and you can see a video of how somebody plays something, and chances are it's going to be fairly accurate to the way somebody might go ahead and play that. But on the guitar, again, if you've never played the guitar, what you have is multiple areas where you can play the same note, and it will sound differently in all these different places. You can have an open string, or you can put your finger on a fret and make the same note, and it can be played in all these different places. So trying to figure out how somebody plays something and make it so that your hands are in the right place and that you get the right feel and the execution of the idea, that really was something that you had to experiment with. You had to listen to records, move the needle back, or rewind the tape, or all these things. So it was hours of tedious little things, and then experimenting, trying to find where those notes were. And that's what I was doing. But one day, out of nowhere, we got a call to our house that there was a guy purporting to be Edward Van Halen. So this to me was incredible, because I was listening to so much Van Halen, and I thought, how could this be? I mean, this is like a magic trick. If this guy actually is Eddie Van Halen, what are the chances that this would happen? And my dad ended up getting on the phone with him, and about 15 or 20 minutes later, he was at the house, and he brought a guitar with him, and I was able to see him play up close and see him play things like Eruption, the intro to Mean Street, and all these other crazy things that I had been trying to imagine how he was doing it, but there it was. So I was laser focused on being able to see exactly how he played some of these things. And that made a huge difference in my progression as a guitar player pretty much overnight, because I was able to see it and see, okay, how challenging is it for him? How is he going for these things? And for him, it was really easy. Obviously, over the years, I learned how to do it, and I was able to get close to playing things the way that Edward did, and get close to the sound and the feel and all those things. But it was really a lifetime's worth of inspiration to keep following that path, along with all the other musical interests that I've had. But that was a really crazy way to start. It wasn't just about learning the notes. It was about trying to figure out how to get the sound and all the textures. So my whole life, that's been my approach, is to really kind of focus in on something really specific so that I could do what I was hearing in my head.
With the exposure, your dad didn't push music on you guys, though, I don't believe, right? It was just, it was in the house, and he supported it.
Say, okay, hey, everybody, here's a great idea. You should become musicians. He didn't do anything like that. Right. If we showed some sort of interest, he might give us some areas to discover some things or learn about stuff. And so I got to spend a lot of time with him in the studio. And even when he was on tour, as I got older, I went on tour a few times and played with him in different locations. But it was always really fascinating to me to watch him work and see how he came up with ideas, and how fast he was able to do that stuff, and how easily he could communicate his ideas to everyone else, specifically because he could write it on the page and give it to them, and they were expected to be able to read it and play it, even if it was hard as hell. So he found people that could do that, and that was a big challenge, because it's not easy to keep a band together, even when it's just four guys that grew up together. Right. So off and on, there would be a revolving door of people in and out of the band that were people that had the requisite skills to be able to learn to sight read this stuff or play it. But the challenge always is, do those people have an attitude that's easy to get along with? Right. During recording sessions, or on a tour bus, or backstage. And that's usually where things always fall apart. You might have people that have really good musical skill, but socially, they're not people that you want to spend time with. I didn't specifically say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do all this stuff. If I had really specific questions, he would answer them for me, but there was never a time where he he did the, okay, I'm gonna take you under my wing and let's do it like this. It wasn't like, okay, I make shoes and I'm gonna show you how to do it, you know,
Yeah.
that I had the chance to record the songs to begin with. It was just one day my dad said, hey, would you like to record a song or two? And I said,